Generally, research studies and research projects, including student research projects, revolve around certain research questions, hypotheses, or research objectives. And it is important for researchers, including student researchers, to connect their research findings or the conclusions of their research to their research questions, hypotheses, and objectives. In many cases, student researchers often fail to connect their research findings or conclusions to their research questions, and as a result, they lose focus of their studies. So, in this brief presentation, we will respond to this question: how to connect your research findings to your research questions, hypotheses, or your research objectives. So, first, generally, as I said in the beginning, a research study is generally valid and significant when the findings of the study are linked with its research questions and hypotheses or research objectives. How can we actually do that, or how can we actually connect our findings to our research questions, objectives, or hypotheses? So one way is to restate the research questions and hypotheses towards the end of our research. That is, when we are actually summarizing our findings and making conclusions on the basis of our findings. So the first thing that we need to do is to restate our questions and hypotheses or research objectives, so that we can once more indicate and bring back the reader to what our research was about and what questions was it supposed to answer, or what hypotheses the data has to respond to in terms of acceptance or rejecting. So, for example, the study sought to answer the following research questions. And so this is the main research question that is associated with this study. How do teaching methods impact students' learning? So that will actually take back the reader to the central point of that research. That is the central question of the research. So it's extremely important. Secondly, in order to connect our research findings to our research objectives, questions, or hypotheses, we need to summarize key findings. And that actually means that we need to organize our key findings in line with our research questions, objectives, and hypotheses. Generally, hypotheses are associated with quantitative research. So in quantitative research, what we can do is to list out the statistical results of our study, and then to indicate whether those findings or those statistical results actually support or refute our hypotheses. So at the end, the reader should know whether our hypotheses are accepted or rejected. Secondly, in qualitative research, generally, we need to summarize our main themes or patterns that emerged as a result of our qualitative data analysis, and then we have to associate those themes or findings to our main research questions. Next, what we need to do is to connect our findings to theoretical framework for our study. So every study has is actually based on certain theoretical framework, and so that theoretical framework actually includes the main theories that we have reviewed and included as a result of our literature review. So at this stage, we need to discuss how our results or our findings align with or diverge from the existing literature and theories. This is also an important way of connecting our findings to our research questions, hypotheses, or objectives. Here is an example of how actually to do this. For example, we can say that the findings support the previous studies by A and B, which suggests that teaching methods have an impact on students' learning. This, however, is in contrast to the findings of C and D, who argue that dash dash dash, whatever argument that they have made. E and F, who are like, here I am referring to previous research, however, associate other factors besides, for example, the impact of teaching methods on students' learning. So this is an example of a discussion where we are bringing back our theoretical framework or our main theories, and in the light of those theories, we are organizing and we are critically analyzing our findings. So this is again a way where we can connect our research objectives, questions, or hypotheses to our findings, or the vice versa. Now, the next one is, the next way to do is to actually discuss the implications of our findings in the light of theoretical and practical background of our study. So, discussing theoretical and practical implications of the findings from your study. So, you have certain findings, certain results. Now, what are its theoretical implications? Or in other words, what do these findings imply in terms of adding to the theory of the particular topic or field? And secondly, in terms of the practical implications. So here is an example. The findings of this study, or these findings, suggest that teaching methods have an impact on students' learning. The study, therefore, has implications in terms of the theory and practice of teaching. So now, we indicate the implications of our findings both in theoretical and practical terms. Other factors might also need to be taken into consideration to explore the issue in more rigorous research design. So again, what we are doing is we are presenting our findings, then we are referring our findings to its theoretical background, and we are referring to its practical implications, and we are also suggesting further analysis of our findings through through different research designs, or in different contexts, or in terms of more rigorous research designs, such as, for example, triangulation and mixed method research designs. Acknowledgement of the limitations or alternative explanations of our findings. Again, this is an extremely important way in which we can actually organize and link back our research findings or results to our research questions, objectives, or hypotheses. So here what we do is we recognize any limitations or restrictions of our study that might affect the interpretation of our findings. Every study is based in certain contexts, certain theoretical contexts, certain practical contexts and constraints. Every research design has its own implications, every sample selection. So as a result, what we can say is that we need to acknowledge the possible limitations or restrictions or constraints that include methodological constraints, that include constraints related to our sample size issues, or external factors that might have impact on our findings. So, for example, here is an example of this kind of the expression of limitations of our study. One limitation of this study was reliance on self-reported data. So, as you know that in many cases in social science research, what we do is that we rely on self-reported data. That is data that we get through interviews or questionnaires and based on perceptions of the respondents. So, which in some cases might not accurately reflect the actual impact of something on something else. For example, the actual impact of teaching methods on students' learning. So, if you are just, for example, relying on the perceptions of students or teachers, without actually using a triangulation, for example, observing that impact or quantifying that impact, that is something that might be considered as a limitation of this of the study. So this is how we can actually, these are some of the ways in which we can actually connect our research findings to our research questions, research hypotheses, and research objectives. We need to restate our research questions, hypotheses, and objectives. We need to organize our findings in the light of our research questions, hypotheses, and objectives. We need to deliberate on the theoretical and practical background or implications of the study, and we need to acknowledge the possible limitations of our findings in the particular context of our study. This is how we will have a clear connection between our research objectives, questions, and hypotheses and our research findings, and this is what is reflected in most organized, well-connected research.